The crimson sky burns. The morning started like any other on Kepler 438b. Zara Blackwood wiped grease from her hands with a worn cloth, squinting at the twin suns rising over the rust-colored horizon. Her salvage crawler hummed quietly beside, her shelter loaded with scrap metal from yesterday's haul. 3 years of solitude had taught her to appreciate these peaceful moments before the day's work began. She had chosen this remote planet for good reason. No colonies, no trade routes, no reminders of the war that had taken everything from her. Just endless stretches of crimson desert, ancient ruins, and enough salvageable materials to keep her. Small operation, profitable. The isolation suited her damaged soul perfectly. Zara secured her tool belt and climbed into the crawler's cockpit, running through her morning checklist with practiced efficiency. Today's target was a promising energy. Signature 12 kilometers northeast, probably another piece of pre-colonial mining equipment. The scanner had detected unusual metal compositions that could fetch good prices on the outer rim markets. The crawler's tracks churned through loose sand as she headed toward the coordinates. The landscape here never changed much. Weathered, rock formations, scattered debris from long-dead civilizations, and the occasional metal spire reaching toward the amber sky like a desperate prayer. She had grown to love this desolate beauty, so different from the crowded military bases where she'd spent her earlier life. 20 minutes into the journey, her scanner began acting strange. The energy signature she'd been tracking suddenly spiked, then split into multiple readings. Zara frowned, tapping the instrument panel. Equipment failures were costly out here, and she couldn't afford repairs right now. Then she saw the smoke. A black column rose from beyond the next ridge, thick and oily against the morning light. Zara's military instincts kicked in immediately. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant either danger or opportunity, depending on your perspective. She'd learned to approach both with caution. She guided the crawler up the rocky slope, engines straining against the gradient. As she crested the ridge, her breath caught in her throat. Below her stretched a scene of devastating beauty and terror. The crash site was massive. A sleek vessel, easily 200 meters long, had carved a burning furrow through the desert floor. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent quality she'd never seen before. Not quite metal, not quite organic. Strange symbols pulsed along its sides with fading light, like a dying heartbeat made visible. Debris scattered in all directions. Some pieces hummed with energy, others seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. This wasn't human technology. This wasn't even close to human technology. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she parked the crawler behind an outcropping of rock. First contact scenarios had been part of her military training, but those were theoretical exercises. The reality of facing actual alien technology made her mouth go dry. She grabbed her emergency medical kit and scanning equipment, then started. Down the slope toward the wreckage. The heat hit her immediately, not just from the fires, but something else. The air itself felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. As she got closer, she could see the extent of the damage. The ship's hull had been breached in multiple places, revealing interior spaces that defied logical design. Corridors curved in spirals, chambers expanded into dimensions that hurt to look at directly. Emergency lighting flickered in patterns that seemed almost like Morse code. Then she heard it, a sound that made her freeze in place, singing. Someone was singing inside the wreckage, a melody both hauntingly beautiful and utterly alien. The voice carried notes that human vocal cords couldn't produce, harmonies that seemed to resonate in her bones. Following the sound, Zara picked her way through twisted metal and crystalline debris. The singing grew stronger, more desperate. She rounded a section of collapsed bulkhead and stopped short. A figure sat among the ruins, back turned toward her. The being was clearly not human, too tall, too thin, with skin that seemed to shift. Between silver and deep blue, Long, translucent hair flowed around slender shoulders like liquid starlight. The singing stopped abruptly. "Hello?" Zara called out, her voice cracking slightly. "Are you injured?" The figure turned slowly, and Zara's heart nearly stopped. The being's face was achingly beautiful in an otherworldly way. High cheekbones, large eyes that held depths of ancient sadness, and features that were almost human, but not quite. Those eyes, a swirling mixture of gold and green, focused on her with startling intensity. When the being spoke, the words came out in perfect, unaccented English, but the voice carried undertones that seemed to bypass her ears and speak directly to her soul. "They're coming for us all." The simple statement hit Zara like a physical blow, not "help me" or "where am I" or any of the things she might have expected from a crash survivor. Instead, a warning that seemed to carry the weight of civilizations. Zara knelt beside the injured alien, her medical training overriding her shock. "Who's coming? Are you hurt?" The being, she somehow knew it was female, looked down at her own body as if surprised to find it damaged. Strange silver fluid leaked from wounds along her arm and torso. "My name is Nyx. Was the navigator of the vessel Star Whisper. We fled from the collective, but they followed us even here." "The collective?" Zara pulled out her medical scanner, though she doubted it would work on alien physiology. "I don't understand." Nyx reached out with a trembling hand and touched Zara's wrist. The contact sent a jolt of images flooding through her mind, vast fleets of dark ships, planets, consumed by some terrible hunger, entire star systems going dark one by one. The visions lasted only seconds, but they left Zara gasping. "They consume everything," Nyx whispered, her voice growing weaker. "Life, thought, hope itself. My people tried to stop them. We failed. Your people don't even know they exist yet." Zara's scanner was beeping frantically, picking up energy readings unlike anything in its database. More concerning were the new signals appearing at the edge of its range, multiple contacts moving fast toward their position. "We need to get you out of here," Zara said, slipping her arm under Nyx's shoulders. "My shelter has medical supplies." Nyx shook her head weakly. "Commander Torres is still alive, in the central chamber. He carries the key, the only weapon that can hurt them. Without it, both our species will fall." The approaching signals were getting closer. Zara looked toward the heart of the wreckage, then back at Nyx. Every instinct told her to run, to get as far away from this situation as possible. She'd already lost too much to other people's wars. But something in Nyx's eyes, a mixture of hope and desperation that transcended species, made the decision for her. "Tell me where to find him," Zara said. As they moved deeper into the alien vessel, Nyx leaning heavily on her shoulder, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that her quiet life of solitude had just ended forever. The crimson sky above them seemed to pulse with menace, and somewhere in the distance, she could swear she heard the sound of approaching engines. The real question wasn't whether she could save Commander Torres or decode whatever message he carried. The real question was whether they could do it before the collective arrived to finish what they'd started. Time was running out, and the fate of two worlds might rest in the hands of a broken engineer and a dying alien navigator. As they disappeared into the twisted metal maze of the crashed ship, neither of them knew that their first meeting would become the stuff of legends, if anyone survived to tell the tale. Whispers from the void. The interior of the alien ship defied every law of physics Zara thought she understood. Corridors bent at impossible angles, leading to chambers that seemed larger on the inside than the outside. Emergency lighting cast, shifting shadows that moved independently of their sources, creating an atmosphere that felt more like walking through a living dream than exploring wreckage. Nyx guided her through the maze with weakening gestures, her silver blood leaving a trail behind them. "The central chamber," she whispered. pointing down a passage that curved upward despite appearing to slope down. Commander Torres activated the emergency beacon before the impact. Zara's scanner chirped warnings about unstable energy fields and structural damage, but she pressed forward. The approaching signals she'd detected earlier were now less than 2 kilometers away. Whatever was coming for them moved with purpose and speed that suggested technology far beyond anything in her experience. "Tell me about the collective," Zara said as they navigated around a section where the ship's hull had twisted into crystalline formations. "How do we fight something like that?" Nix paused, leaning against what might have been a wall or ceiling. The ship's geometry made such distinctions meaningless. Her large eyes reflected the strange lighting as she seemed to look through time itself. "They were not always destroyers," she began, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air shimmer. "Long ago, they were like us, curious, creative, full of wonder at the universe's mysteries. But they discovered something in the deep void between galaxies, something that changed them." As she spoke, Nix's touch on Zara's arm sent fleeting images. A civilization of graceful beings reaching toward distant stars. Then the same beings transformed into something cold and mechanical, their eyes empty of everything that had once made them alive. "They consume consciousness itself," Nix continued. "Not just life, but the spark that makes life meaningful. Worlds they touch become gray, empty shells where nothing new can ever grow or dream or hope." They reached a massive breach in the ship's hull where emergency barriers flickered with failing power. Through the gap, Zara could see the central chamber, a spherical room suspended by energy fields that pulsed like a beating heart. At its center, a figure in ornate armor sat motionless in a chair that seemed grown rather than built. "Commander Torres," Nix breathed. "He still lives, but barely." Getting to the chamber required crossing 30 meters of open space where the ship's artificial gravity failed completely. Zara secured a rescue line to a structural beam and helped Nix into an improvised harness. The alien's weight felt wrong in the shifting gravity, sometimes heavy as stone, sometimes light as air. They drifted across the gap, using handholds that appeared and disappeared as the ship's systems fluctuated. Halfway across, Zara's scanner erupted in alarms. The approaching signals had accelerated dramatically and were now converging on their position from multiple directions. "Hunter drones," Nix said, reading the fear in Zara's expression. "They followed our trail through hyperspace. We have minutes, maybe less." They reached the central chamber as the first distant thrumming became audible, a sound like mechanical wasps the size of aircraft. Commander Torres raised his head slowly as they entered, his alien features bearing the unmistakable marks of approaching death. He was taller than Nix, with skin that held the deep blue-green of ocean depths and eyes like captured starlight. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of command even in weakness. "Navigator Nix, you survived the crash." "Good." His gaze shifted to Zara with curiosity but no hostility. "And you brought a human. Interesting timing." "Commander, the weapon." "Data," Nix said urgently. "The frequencies that can disrupt their neural networks. Did the archives survive?" Torres touched a panel beside his chair, and the chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts, technical specifications, and data streams that made Zara's engineering background feel primitive. "The quantum resonance patterns are intact but incomplete. We need both our technology and human innovation to make them work." The thrumming outside grew louder, accompanied by new sounds, the screech of metal being cut by energy weapons. The hunter drones had reached the wreckage. "I don't understand," Zara said, studying the displays. "What makes human technology special?" Commander Torres managed what might have been a smile. "Your species approaches problems differently than we do. Where we see elegant solutions, you see practical ones. Where we create beauty, you create function." The collective has learned to counter our methods, but they have never encountered human engineering. One of the holograms showed a weapon design, part alien grace, part human brutality. Energy conduits flowed in artistic curves, but the core mechanism was pure human pragmatism, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The resonance disruptor, Torres explained. It can sever the quantum entanglement that binds the collective to their consumed worlds. But it requires both our power generation and your manufacturing techniques to build. A violent crash echoed through the ship as something large forced its way through the outer hull. Emergency lighting shifted to warning red, and the chamber's gravity field fluctuated wildly. "They're inside," Nix whispered. Torres reached into his armor and withdrew a crystalline data core that pulsed with its own inner light. "Everything we learned about the collective is here. Their weaknesses, their plans, the location of their primary nexus. Get this to your Earth command, and there might still be hope." Zara took the crystal, surprised by its warmth. "What about you? Both of you?" "I will not survive my injuries," Torres said simply. "And Nix?" He looked at his navigator with something like paternal affection. "She carries a quantum tracer in her neural cortex. Wherever she goes, they can follow." The sound of approaching hunter drones grew deafening. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Zara could see sleek, predatory shapes moving through the ship's corridors with liquid grace. They looked like mechanical sharks built from shadow and starlight. "There's another way," Nick said suddenly. "The ship's quantum drive is still partially functional. If we overload it, the explosion will destroy the hunter drones and create a temporal distortion. You could escape in the confusion." "And both of you would die," Zara protested. "Better that than let the collective reach Earth unprepared," Torres replied. "Your species deserves a chance to fight." The first hunter drone appeared at the chamber's entrance, a flowing mass of liquid metal and energy that shifted between solid and plasma states. Its sensors focused on them with malevolent intelligence, and Zara felt a cold presence probing at the edges of her mind. But then Nix stepped forward, placing herself between the drone and the others. The alien's form began to glow with internal light. And when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made reality itself seem to bend. "I am Navigator Nix of the Star Whisper, daughter of the crystal depths, keeper of the old songs. You will not pass while I draw breath." The confrontation that followed lasted only seconds, but those seconds contained lifetimes of courage and sacrifice. Nix's mental abilities clashed with the drone's invasive presence, while Torres activated the ship's self-destruct sequence with his dying strength. "Go!" Nix shouted to Zara over the rising energy whine. "Take the data core. Tell your people we tried to warn them." Zara ran. She ran through corridors that twisted like living things, past chambers where physics broke down completely, toward an emergency exit that might or might not still exist. Behind her, the ship's quantum drive began its catastrophic overload, and she felt, rather than heard, Nix's final defiant song echoing through dimensions she couldn't comprehend. She reached her crawler just as the Star Whisper disappeared in a flash of light that turned the desert to glass for kilometers in every direction. When her vision cleared, nothing remained but a perfectly smooth crater and the crystal data core clutched in her trembling hands. Standing at the edge of that glass, crater under Kepler 438b's twin suns, Zara understood that her life had changed forever. She was no longer just a salvager hiding from the past. She was now humanity's first line of defense against a threat that could end everything. The crystal in her hands pulsed with stored knowledge, and somewhere in its quantum matrices, she could swear she heard an echo of Nix's voice whispering, "Remember us. Save them all." The war for consciousness itself had begun, and Zara Blackwood was humanity's only warning.